What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Over the last couple days, the Overwatch devs have done a bunch of Q&As. So what I did is I consolidated all of that information and took all the important stuff, and I'm going to run through that and give you an idea of what all the upcoming changes are, or some other important information that the devs have put out. Real quick update. Yesterday I showed off an Overwatch 2 dev build that was created in the Overwatch workshop. This will perfectly replicate everything you saw in the Overwatch dev live stream last week, with all of the new features for Overwatch 2, the new abilities, the new role passives, the 5v5 system, all that sort of stuff, so you can use that and try it out. Today we just made an update to it that has a couple of bug fixes, as well as a bunch of improvements to the features and all that sort of other stuff. So once again, you can always import the same code. It's going to be H030G. Always import that code, and you'll have the latest version every single time. So the first thing is that there is going to be a very big feature that's going to be added to the game very soon. We don't know exactly when this is going to happen, but the devs seem to be indicating that it will happen within the next couple of weeks, possibly within a month. I'm guessing it'll probably end up happening right after the anniversary event is over, or maybe right before the anniversary event ends. Regardless, we're told that this is one of the biggest things that they've ever added to the game. We don't know exactly what it's going to be. Some people have speculated that it might be guild system or something like that, but it's supposed to be really big, and it will be happening very soon. Moving on to the character skins, we're told that both Symmetra and Widowmaker are supposed to be getting super amazing legendary skins very soon. Also, for those of you that have been asking about the limited time skins that were available in previous events and all that sort of stuff, Blizzard is considering the option of bringing those things back. It might just be limited to the Overwatch League stuff, or it may be expanded to all the other stuff. We don't know, no details right now, but they are considering bringing back the old skins that are no longer available, at least for a short amount of time. Moving on to hero balance, we already know that they're going to be reducing the overall amount of crowd control effects in the game. What's going to end up happening is only the tank characters are going to consistently have CC effects. However, they emphasize that it doesn't mean that only the tanks will have CC, or that the tanks will be entirely focused on CC. It's just that they want to remove a lot of those effects from the game, and the characters that are going to end up losing them are going to be the DPS and the support, where the tanks are still going to have it. So it makes it a little bit more unique of a kind of class role ability for the tanks, is that they're the ones that are going to have the CC stuff. However, some of those CC abilities will end up staying, like Ana's Sleep Dart and Lucio's Boop. McCree, however, will probably end up losing his stun. Another character that's going to be kind of an issue is Doomfist, as a DPS hero with a huge amount of CC, will be a problem, and that character will likely need a lot of changes, possibly a rework. And one of the things that was mentioned was that they can't remove CC entirely, because then characters like Hammond and Tracer would just be unstoppable. So you can't have the high mobility characters without having some way to kind of counter them. For character reworks and role changes, we know that Orisa, Sigma, and a few others are already getting some pretty significant changes. They didn't allow us to even see those characters during the dev live stream the other day. Another character that is being seriously considered for a rework is Mei, who is also being considered being moved into the tank role. However, they admit that it would require a lot of changes. But one of the possibilities that they are considering is if they did move her into that role, they would probably end up giving her a floor freeze ability where she could spray the ice stuff onto the ground, and then she would be able to slide around faster than normal movement speed in order to get her into the correct positions. Because she would be the only tank on the team, or the only bruiser on the team, she would need a little bit more mobility to do that sort of stuff. So that is a consideration. Another character that is getting a pretty significant rework is Bastion, and they said that the character is being reworked from the ground up. Essentially, they are willing to toss out everything about the character except for the fact that he's a transforming robot, and that's about it. So everything else is able to be changed. They just want to make him as a robot that can shift into different things and different forms and whatnot, and as long as that feels fun, then it's pretty much okay. So what they're doing is the main attack in the recon form is likely going to get a big change in order to make it different from the other modes. They didn't really give too many details on it. They also mentioned that Sentry mode has been kind of changed a little bit in their testing, being able to move it around, although it would be a lot slower. So Really, it depends on how fast they make the Sentry mode move. If it's a little bit slower than your normal movement speed, then that's okay. But if they make it really, really slow, like, say, Reaper or McCree during their ultimates, then that's still going to be garbage, because effectively, you're still stationary. Like, yeah, you can move along at a snail's pace, but you're still basically not moving, and it's still going to be garbage. Really, it's going to depend on how fast they move that, and also what other changes they make to the character. They also mentioned that the reason for some of these changes is because they finally were able to admit that the sitting in one spot thing doesn't work in Overwatch. We also learned a bit about Sombra, not necessarily about what they're going to be changing in the future, but what they tried in the past. Originally, they said that Sombra was meant to be a support, but it just didn't work, and they tried a whole bunch of different stuff. So they tried increased damage from behind, they tried hacking while invisible, they added bonus damage to hack targets, they had hack granting vision to the entire team, just like what Widowmaker's ult does, except it would be a single target. And then a big one that they tried was, instead of locking out abilities like what the hack ability does now, instead the hack would debuff the enemy, and it would lower whatever damage or healing that character was capable of doing. So instead of doing 100 damage for a hit, it would be 80 damage or something like that. But what they found out during playtesting was that the players really, really didn't like it. They felt that it was really bad, and they didn't like it. So what Blizzard essentially decided was they're not going to have any kind of debuffs on the enemy that would lower their damage or their healing output. So you can still have the damage reduction, but it needs to be on the target. So that way you can have resistance, and you can have sound barrier, and all that sort of stuff. That is fine, because you can have that lower the damage once it hits the target, but they didn't want to lower the damage as it was coming out of the other player. So this means that some of my hero concepts don't really kind of mesh well with that. I might end up having to revisit some of those. And now that I've actually been building them in the workshop, I actually have the ability to change some of that stuff. But essentially, what you can take away from this is that the idea of debuffing an enemy so that they have reduced damage or reduced healing probably is never going to happen in Overwatch. From this testing with Sombra, they just didn't like how it worked. However, they did mention an Overwatch 2 change that does actually affect Sombra. Because they changed the way that the extra shielding and health and all that stuff works whenever you have a sound barrier or Doomfist passive and all that sort of stuff, right now, in Overwatch 1, EMP will remove all that stuff. However, in Overwatch 2, all of those types of things have been consolidated down into one type of extra health called Overhealth, and it appears as a green bar on your health, and that can no longer be removed by EMP. Again, whether or not this change stays, or whether or not they make any other significant changes to Sombra, we don't know, but I think it's a pretty good chance that they're going to continue making more changes to Sombra. Another thing that might possibly get added to the game is a ping ability. People have been asking for this for a little while now, where you can ping a location and tell your entire team to move there, or you can ping an enemy player so that your team focuses on them. There are lots of different ways that you can use this ping function in order to benefit your team. However, we now know that they have a fully working prototype of a ping system within Overwatch, but they said that they're not really sure if they want to add it to the game yet, and there might be some other changes that they want to make. This version may not be what ends up going into the game in that, but for those of you that have been wanting a ping system, they have one, and it works. It's just a question of whether or not they actually add it to the game. Moving on to maps and game modes, we found out that there is a new secret game mode that is either completed or at least in the testing phase internally at Overwatch. We already found out about the push game mode that was added to the game. This was shown off BlizzCon 2019. We know that the 2 capture point modes are being removed from the game, but during BlizzCon 2019, we were shown a map called Gothenburg, and it appeared to be a 2 capture point map. But when asked about this, apparently one of the devs forgot about it, and he claimed that it might be, the map, Gothenburg, might be created at some point, and it would be interesting for a new game mode. Unfortunately, of course, we already saw the Gothenburg map. It was in a lot of the kind of teaser footage and all that sort of stuff. So we know that the map has been made, and we know that it was for the 2 capture point mode. So when asked about this with follow-ups, he kind of like kind of dodged it a little bit and realized that he just accidentally leaked stuff. So essentially what happened was, since he claimed that it might be for a new game mode at some point, he essentially confirmed that both Gothenburg and the new India map will be part of a new, as of yet unknown game mode. But what that is, we don't know. But it's not going to be any of the existing stuff. It's going to be something new. As for the 2 capture point game modes, they were in the middle of reworking both Paris and Horizon when the decision was made to scrap the 2 capture point game mode. And while they did make some progress on adjusting those maps, because they're just getting rid of them and they're not going to be used in quick play or competitive at all in the future, they decided to just kind of abandon those things. So while there was progress being made, they're probably never ever going to get finished, and the Paris and Horizon maps that we have currently are the ones that we're just going to have, and it's going to stay that way. They also briefly talked about a map that was never made, and that was going to be the Galapagos map. This was shown in some of the artwork and the teaser footage and that sort of thing, and I've showed this quite a few times in the past here. You can see it on the screen. So this was one of the early concept maps, and it was supposed to be an escort map that happened inside a large habitat underwater, but for whatever variety of reasons, they ended up not deciding to go with this, so the Galapagos map was never actually made, and whether or not it ever does get made in the future is unknown. So that's all the important stuff that we've gotten over the last couple days. What do you guys think about these changes, the potential reworks, and all that? Let me know down below. A big thanks to all the Paragons and other channel members for all your support. If you'd like to become one and grab some cool rewards, click the join button down below. Also, if you enjoyed the video, drop a like before you leave. And remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.